Hello and welcome to You Talking to Me. Today we focus on the ongoing saga between Greece and its Eurozone partners, about its steps and also about the warning that Mr. Tsipras, the Prime Minister of Greece, warned the Eurozone partners that it may be run out of money in the coming weeks and asked for urgent help from its creditors. To prevent this cash crunch, I have the pleasure to welcome two members of the European Parliament, Mrs. Marisa Matias, you a Portuguese member from
United
Plus, and Sander Loones, you a Belgian member from the Conservative and Reformist group.
Exactly.
Hello and welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So the Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras said that in the coming weeks the country may run out of money and can even not cover its urgent cash needs, or so the country may run out of money. But what will happen? And this scenario could really happen, Mr. Loones?
Well, this scenario could happen, but let me perhaps first and foremost say something about the Greek people. They are suffering harsh times. It's not evident for them. The things they are faced with are strong measures. For them, it's difficult to see light at the end of the tunnel. So it should remain our constant focus to give them this view on the future. But it's true, if we want to give them the view on the future, Greece will have to reform. It has to take the necessary measures in order to obtain extra funding from Europe. So if the upcoming weeks Mr. Tsipras wants to get more money, he will have to show as well that he's prepared to execute reforms.
So Mr. Tsipras should by Monday set up a list of reforms. Mrs. Matias, do you think this is possible in few days?
I think that we are assisting to a situation which is really unbelievable, in the sense that, yes, there is a humanitarian crisis in Greece. We are talking about a lot of people lose their job, but the level of poverty is huge. We are assisting in the middle of European Union a situation where, for instance, the death of children has increased, the born children has increased, which we cannot accept in a developed region as Europe. And now I think that what the European institutions are doing is just unacceptable, in the sense they are pushing all the pressure into the new Greek government. And what happened was that for the last few years, for the last 4 years with the Troika intervention, everyone was just giving applauses to Mr. Samaras and the other governments, which are from the same family of the running institutions in the European Union. They did nothing in terms of reforms. And now that the Greeks are facing this humanitarian crisis, they are wanting to push and to put all the responsibilities in a new government, which didn't do anything yet because it's not allowed to do. So I would like that the European institutions would show a little bit of solidarity and wait, because Mr. Tsipras has already compromised himself to put the reforms into place and finally fight against fiscal fraud and all the things which didn't happen over the last year. So they cannot be punished for something that the others did.
It's true that we have to get away from these tensions and this atmosphere of blackmail. It's blackmail from the Greek people towards Europe, and it's blackmail also in a sense from Europe towards Greece. What we need to do is see how we can work together to make sure that we can restore competitivity of this Greek economy. Mr. Tsipras will have to do what he has to do. I just heard Mrs. Matias mention that his predecessors did not do what they were supposed to do. It's true that Mr. Tsipras is now confronted with a situation that is even worse than before, but there's no quick fix solutions. We have to make sure that Greece can make these reforms. Otherwise, it will not regain a strong economy which is necessary to have these jobs for Greek people. Because it's true, it's confronting. 26% of people don't have a job in Greece. 1 in 2 of young people do not have a job. These are figures that we should fight against. But there's only one way to do it, is to have an economy that is stronger and creates jobs.
Yeah. So Syriza has a lot to promise and has a lot to do. But I want to come back to the blackmailing that you were saying. I want to come back to the European Central Bank, which has been accused of blackmailing Athens into agreeing to bailout conditions. So, Mrs. Matias, you were saying that Mr. Draghi, its president, is blackmailing Greece.
Yes,
why do you think that?
Yes, I do believe they are blackmailing, and I keep my words, because they did it through before the elections. The decision of not including Greece in the quantitative easing, for instance, it was done before. Everyone is always saying that, okay, we have rules and we have to accomplish with the rules. The rules are changing all the time according to what is needed. For instance, the ECB shouldn't be part of the Troika, and it was part of the Troika, but is out of his mandate. So they are always playing the game of trying to put themselves inside the mandate and the treaties whenever it is useful, but going outside all the time. So there's a blackmail, yes, because what Mr. Draghi answered about the exposure of the ECB to the Greek debt has nothing to do with the question which I put, because the exposure, which is high, is true, was when ECB was buying the titles, the bonds of the Greek debt to the commercial banks of Germany and France. Has nothing to do with this new form, which is more like a kind of a step towards zero bonds. So they are blackmailing the stabilization.
You also say that if the policy continues, it will be unsustainable to have Greece in the Eurozone.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that? A Grexit?
Because I think that what the European institutions are doing with this blackmailing and with this pushing to the limits of the Greek government and the Greek citizens, where we already saw that the only part which is being able to negotiate to see this the Greek government, not the European institutions. So we cannot talk about not having the will to negotiate, because they are negotiating and they are sitting in a lot of aspects.
Okay. You wanted to talk about the Grexit.
Yeah, if I just may reply three things. I think the ECB has done some things wrong in the past. For instance, we've seen the bailouts who gained from the bailouts financial institutions, not citizens. One. Two, I think it's difficult to say that Europe has not shown his solidarity towards the Greek people. We've already shown our solidarity for 240 billion euros. And then three, to come to your question on the Grexit. As Mrs. Matias said, yes, in politics, rules are constantly changing. Unfortunately, the question of Greece is not only a political question, but an economical question. The fact is, when a country decides to enter in the Eurozone, it decides to enter a game. And if you want to enter it, you have to play by the rules. If you don't play by the rules, it's game over. And what are these rules? We have to make sure that there's more or less, the countries have more or less the same competitivity. They have a sound budget. They have good financing and banking systems, and we see that if we would grant now more flexibility to Greece, other countries might ask it as well.
We will come back on this issue afterwards, on the influence of other parties. Perfect. But I want to have Stavros. We have Stavros from Sky Radio, a Euranet Plus member, and he has a question for you.
Hi, Laeticia. Hi to your invitees. So I've been hearing your conversation, which is highly interesting. And just to give you an input, in my country, there's a saying that, in my opinion, resumes perfectly the situation in Greece. We say that we can't go forward because we've reached the edge of a cliff, and we can't go back as there's a violent steam passing behind us. So my question, a Greek default is out of question, as this would mean a general defeat for the Eurozone in total. A Grexit would more or less mean the same, and additional money to Greece, which is almost in a bankrupt state, are given only with reforms that seem to be very, very difficult at the moment to implement. So what other options are there, or are there any other options, in fact?
Okay, Mr. Loones, could you answer to Stavros?
Well, as mentioned before, unfortunately, there are no quick fix solutions. The only true way, if we want to maintain Greece within the Eurozone, is to make sure they perform these structural reforms to have a stronger economy. As to say that, the question is also, is a Grexit, is it possible or not? My question to Mr. Draghi just a couple of days ago in the European Parliament was, is ECB preparing a Grexit? Because we've read in a monthly journal in Germany that it is. ECB is preparing scenarios for a Grexit. So it shows that several people are starting to think in that direction as well.
But will it be a disaster for Eurozone if Greece gets out?
Yeah, but European institutions are systematically shooting their own feet if the Greek case is not solved. And we can see that there was no solidarity. I must disagree with you. The solidarity was only with the solidarity was with the financial markets, because what is the outcome of solidarity if a country loses 25% of GDP, has a debt which is totally unsustainable, people are in poverty? There's no solidarity. What we created was a monster which generated more and more macroeconomic imbalances and put countries in very difficult situations. So what are the solutions in this scenario? To answer directly to Stavros' question, first, to deliver to Greece the money which is due. And I already said the profits of the ECB, the money which was paid and should not be paid to the stabilization fund and mechanism, and the structural funds which were not used by the previous government but were a right of the Greek citizens. And of course, there's a need to have a kind of moratorium for instance, because all the public money which is available cannot be used just to pay the interest rates. So there's a need to have a kind of waiting in order to put the reforms into practice, but we need to do this. It will not affect in any way the European Union. But if we don't do it, we are just about to destroy the European Union.
No, it will.
Okay, yes, last word about this, and then we go on
in our
another
opinion,
issue.
it will affect the European Union. To give other examples, in Portugal, I see that interest rate is higher than in Greece. Ireland has executed the reforms that are necessary. Honest to say, the situation in Ireland wasn't as bad as in Greece, but it has shown that now, with these reforms, it can have its productivity raised by 30% last year. So structural reforms are the solutions and are the only way to go.
But the problem is that as we have very different economies, the only adjustment factor that we have in economies like Greece or Portugal is the value of the work, is the workers' rights. You have no other option rather than distract and cut on wages and cut on pensions and cut on social state and welfare state. So can we live in an European Union where some of the citizens have access to health but the others cannot have? Some of the citizens can be paid fairly by their work and others cannot be? That's the issue that we are facing.
Just very briefly, I don't think we are forcing Greece to do anything.
No,
but it was a decision.
No, the structural reforms mean cut.
Let me answer. We're not forcing Greece. We haven't forced Greece to enter in the Eurozone. But if you enter the zone, it means that you have to play by the rules. You have to make sure your economy is competitive.
There was a rule that, and we knew with very differential economies, that deficitary
but then they
countries,
shouldn't have entered the Eurozone.
Deficitary countries, okay, then they can punish
enter in the Eurozone.
If this is the discourse, if you say that there's no way to balance these different countries because they're too
there's a way. There's a way.
Too different.
That way is simple.
The only economic response would then be.
There's a way. It is called redistribution.
It's not me saying Grexit. It's making the conclusion.
No,
of
it
a
is
reasoning.
called redistribution. The European budget was made for that.
Okay.
To make a redistribution from excedentary countries to deficitary countries. We knew that the imbalances would arrive and would be reinforced. So we would need to have redistribution mechanisms.
Okay, I have to follow on. Oh, sorry, but I have to follow on with Ruben from Spain. He's got a question from Spain about the influence that Syriza could have on other parties, such as Podemos in Spain.
Hello from Spain. Interesting debate. Some analysts in my country have pointed the idea that the Spanish government has shown a harder position than other governments about Greece, because if Syriza have success, could be the same in other forces like Podemos. Do you feel that this is a reality even in your own countries?
So, Mrs. Matias, do you think...
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's a reality, that Greece is also being used and all this pressure is used in order to avoid transformations in other countries. Because what is at stake is not a question of if we can solve or not the debt problem in Greece. Debt is only an instrument to continue to blackmail. What is at the center is the hegemony of a political system which has dominated over the last 20 years and says there's no alternative to austerity. So what the institutions institutions cannot lose is the opportunity to continue to put austerity as the only alternative. And if in Greece it's shown that there's in fact an alternative and is better to people, it's not only the Greeks who are going to see it, but 500 million of citizens. And these institutions and the German government, they don't want to put it at risk. That's a question that, of course, is playing, because with the emergence of Podemos and Sinn Féin and other forces, they don't want to allow that people choose a different alternative.
You quote from a right-wing party, so in Belgium, NVA. So are you afraid, Mr. Loones, about this emerging of a radical left party in Europe?
Honest to say, I'm not. It's true that the Greek case has an influence on politics, internal politics. For instance, in Spain, as the question was told, we also see that in the discussions in the European Council. But there's two sides on the medal. Why are they strongly opposed to it, or take on strong positions in the discussions? Because of the future and Podemos, and I think you have a point there. But also because of the past, because these countries typically have done what was necessary, whereas Greece hasn't. And it's a bit strange that the student in the class who hasn't done his homework now gets a reward, whereas the others don't.
Let's have a look at our comments and reaction on Facebook. So Sven wrote, a Grexit, even by accident, would be a very bad signal for our European construction, but Syriza promised a lot of things and not realistic ones. So therefore, Greek people could be very angry. And then maybe go and vote for the Golden Dawn party, so the extreme right party in Greece, at the next vote. So voting for the Golden Dawn, do you think this is an option for the Greek people if Syriza fails?
I think that in politics there's always an order to the empty spaces, and they are occupied, no matter whom, but they are occupied, they are never empty. In this case, I'm glad that it was occupied by Syriza. But in fact, as there's a structural crisis in the political system in Greece and the traditional parties as well as in Spain, I'm afraid that if this pressure continues, that yes, that we can assist afterwards to a reinforcement of Golden Dawn. And in that case, then, yes, we are talking about the destruction of the European Union, because we are talking about nationalistic forces. We are not talking about those with whom you can talk for a common construction of a project. And as for the promises, is not realistic to say that people should have access to electricity and food. I think is the basics of the basics when we are talking about democracy and human rights.
We have to end up this program, so thank you for coming, both of you, and see you next time. Bye.